Hello and welcome to Kim's Cozy Corner. This is part 2 of the garden redesign. Like I said, this is part 2 of the garden redesign. So in part 1, we talked about the orchard and the arch trellis area. If you haven't seen that video, please check it out. This is part 2 of the redesign. And so in part 2, we're going to talk about the main garden area and all of the changes that you see around me. One of the first things that I wanted to do as I was thinking about the garden this year, or should I say, as I was thinking about the garden for next year, I wanted to make sure that one, that the garden was more functional so that I had room to move around in the garden. But at the same time, I wanted to take into consideration what I've learned over the last 15 years of gardening in this space. One of the primary things that I've learned is that the sun, which, by the way, I already knew this, is going to rise on this side of my garden over here, and it's going to come across the garden and it's going to set over there. So the hottest part of the day is over there. The coolest part of the day is on that side. But now that I've taken some big trees out of the garden, I now get so much sun in the garden, I can think differently about how I'm setting up my garden. So when I put some of my first beds in, like this one right here behind me, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if the sun starts there and it ends there, I'm going to get full sun on everything growing on this trellis. And that is true. But the hottest part of the sun is at the end of the day. So my summer vegetables, the vegetables that love that hot sun, always grew better on the backside of this trellis. So as I was thinking about putting in new beds, I wanted to make sure that I had enough beds that were getting full sun along the whole trellis in the morning all the way through the evening in that warmest sun. So I turned some of my beds in a different direction. And so I did the same thing over in my orchard area that you'll see in the first video, part 1. I took all of the beds out here. Here's a pictures of how this area looked prior to us doing the work in this space. And in the picture, you'll see that I had a 4x5 wooden bed, and then I had two 4x4 wooden beds here, and then I had a very long 2x6 wooden bed, but it was only like 6 or 8 inches tall, so they were very short beds. I'm finding that I'm really liking the metal raised beds. So all of my raised beds are Vego Garden metal raised beds. These are actually the 10-inch metal raised beds. So I have 17-inch metal raised beds throughout the garden, but in this space here, I'm using 10-inch metal raised, or excuse me, 11-inch metal raised beds. Having that little extra depth, it has allowed me to grow potatoes in this space successfully over at my neighbors, because I do manage that space over there. And we put in two 11-inch metal beds over there this year, and they did amazing. So I brought the 11-inch beds over into my main garden space as well. But the extra depth is going to help this space here. And now that I'm putting trellising up from east to west, where everything on the trellis is going to get full sun all day, the cool sun as well as that super hot sun in the evenings, I believe this is a good space for tomatoes. This is a great space for melons, things that really want that hot sun that's going to climb a little bit. So I think this can improve, one, me harvesting melons, because I've had one what I call truly successful season with melons. But tomatoes, I always do a good job with tomatoes because I have so many tomato plants. But I'm going to have a bed going that way. I got this one here which is going to follow the same design as everything else, and I'll explain why in just a minute. And the one behind me here, it'll probably have a trellis in it. I haven't decided yet, so that's why you don't see the T-post in this bed right behind me here. But the reason why I didn't just put 3 beds facing in the same direction is the other issue that I had in my garden beforehand is I only made 2-foot walkways. Initially, when I first started out, these first beds that I had in this space right here go back 15 years. They go back, like, I started with 1 bed, I started with 1 row, and then I put the next row in, and the garden kept growing. But I only left 2-foot wide walking spaces. And that doesn't work for my wheelbarrows, and that doesn't work for these massive trash cans and totes and everything that I use in the garden today. So removing those wooden beds and turning this one perpendicular to these other 2 beds really opens up this space right here. And I'm always doing something in the garden. I'm trying to do a video, or I'm trying to get ready to plant new things into the garden. So it really opens up this space right here. Now, let me be clear. This space, it's not going to stay open, y'all, because you know I'm going to put some kind of pot or something right here in this space as well. So nothing's going to stay that open. But now, if you want to say walking space in between my beds, it's going to be closer to 4 feet wide versus 2 feet wide. And then all of this space right here, I can put pots and all kinds of other goodies in this space here. Or something that might need just a teeny little bit of shading, because this trellis right here will kind of shade it out a little bit. But that's this space right here. We put new paper down. We dug up all of this amazing soil that I have. And all of my soil initially started out as a potting soil, a high quality potting soil. And then since then, I've been adding leaf mulch, compost, and then different types of fertilizers to it. So we made sure we dug that up. We put new weed barrier down throughout my whole garden, which in some places it didn't need it, but I put it down anyway, because when the season comes in the spring, I'm going to be ready. I'm not going to have to worry about any of these tasks. So we got the paper down, we got the new beds down. I haven't had to buy any additional soil yet, but I'm sure I'm going to have to buy some in the spring. This right here is the perfect example of how narrow my walking space in between my beds was, in the space just behind the camera there. And this is too narrow. I can't do anything in this space. I can't even get my little seat in between, my little garden stool, to harvest in this space. And so we took that out on the other side, and we will eventually take out this one other bed right here that's going to really open the space up. And I'm sure it's pretty obvious as to why I haven't taken this bed out yet. I have Brussels sprouts growing in this bed that I'm still harvesting on. But once we finish with the Brussels sprouts for the season, and honestly, it may be spring before I get to it, because I am going to harvest off of the Brussels sprouts as long as I can. But this little, what is this, a 2 by 3 foot wooden bed right here? This little wooden bed will come out. It'll open this space on up. And then back here, I have another 4 by 4 wooden bed that's coming out. But again, I have Brussels sprouts and worms. Worms. Oh my goodness, worms are everywhere. We're going to have to take care of that. But I have Brussels sprouts in this bed as well. And this bed's going to come out. And I'm going to put a 4th metal raised bed in this space here. So I purchased 8 more metal raised beds. And I put in 4 over in the arched area and the orchard area, the fruit area. So I've already put in 4, and that's the 17-inch metal raised beds. And then in this space here, there's going to be a total of 4 11-inch metal raised beds. And so the 4th one will go back here after I've had a chance to harvest some of these Brussels sprouts and enjoy those for the rest of the season. And that will be the last change to this space here. In these next 3 rows of wooden raised beds, I didn't make any changes in these spaces here. We just added a little bit of paper or weed barrier in the spaces here to make sure they're nice and clean and I don't have to pull weeds up in the spring. But I didn't make any changes. I have a nice wide walkway. Now, it's not 4 feet wide, but it's definitely wide enough to get my wheelbarrow and everything through, my little seat, my carts, and all of that kind of stuff. So we are good in this space for at least another couple of years before I have to make a decision on, am I going to put more wooden beds down, or if I'm going to convert everything to a metal raised bed. So we have time to think about it. Just behind me here are some metal raised beds that I put in place this season, and I enjoyed them so much. I have to really make some decisions on, do we take it all out and go 100% metal, or do we stay with the wood? Wood is a cheaper option up front, but the metal raised beds are good for 25 years. So I put it in once and then I'm done for probably in my lifetime forever. But 25 years versus 3 or 4, 5 years for wooden beds. And wood is getting more and more expensive. So to get a good quality wood like cedar or something like that, that's very expensive. To get wood that's not pressure cheap or treated is much cheaper, but it just doesn't last. And you really don't want the pressure treated wood. I started off with it, but that's not really what you want in your garden because it can leach out those chemicals into your garden. These beds didn't change, but I did go ahead and get them all cleaned up for the season. No more tomatoes, no more tomatoes, no more green beans. The only thing I got left in my garden, y'all, is some brassicas. And I made sure I held on to my brassicas because we want to eat out the garden as long as we can anyway. We don't want to just get rid of stuff that's perfect for this time of the year. Nice cool days with a little bit of frost. Your brassicas love it. But I pulled out all of my broccoli. They had been going since March. And we are in early days of November. And I was eating off of the same broccoli plants for all of those months. So we had a great season. Left a little bit of some of my Korean radish, a few flowers here or there, but for the most part, these beds are done. All I got left to do is put them to bed with some leaf mulch. But we will wait and do that when I finish this area right beside me. So let's pan this area for you here so you can see there's still a few things in here. There's a few things. There's a few peppers in there. I didn't pull them out, but I seriously doubt we're going to get any more peppers. Way in the back, that's where all of those Brussels sprouts are back there. This middle section has always been open. You see the new metal raised beds in there. And then we come around to the wooden raised beds and you see there's plenty of space in between them. But all of the tomatoes are out. All of the broccoli are out of these wooden raised beds as well. There are some weeds in there. I didn't get those out yet, but we will be putting these beds to bed. The process to set up each of these beds are identical to the process that I use for the 17-inch metal raised beds. And so as far as putting them together, all of that kind of stuff is exactly the same. The only difference is since I'm only 11 inches deep, only 11 inches, there's not a lot of room in here for the different types of logs and the twigs and all that kind of stuff that I put in the metal raised, in the 17-inch raised beds. So in these raised beds right here, in these two, I only used cardboard in the bottom, only cardboard. There's no twigs, there are no logs, nothing like that, because I want all of this growing space. Like if I want to grow potatoes in here, y'all, I need all of this space. So that's the difference in setting up these beds. There's cardboard in the very bottom, and then I transferred the soil into these beds. That's the only difference. In this first bed over here, since I put the bed exactly in the same spot as the wooden bed, There's no soil under, no paper under this bed. There's no cardboard under this bed. All I did was cover up the soil that was already there and pile the soil from this side into the top of the bed. So I know this bed will have an issue with weeds. So I am going to have to do a lot of weeding. There's weeds in here now in this upcoming season. But this bed has been in place for almost 15 years, or this soil right here has been in place for almost 15 years. So the paper that was underneath this space right here, the paper from all those years ago, I'm sure has gone. I'm sure is completely gone. But the soil in this space here goes deep. This is good, rich soil. It's not the clay soil that you usually see in my garden. So I think we're going to be okay. We're just going to have to do some weeding. But if I'm only weeding a few beds, no big deal when everything else is going to be in good shape. So now that I've kind of given you an update of how the garden's looking, let's go ahead and get back to finishing up this area. And we're going to work on cattle panel trellising next. Now, I haven't finished setting up the metal raised beds yet, so I still got plastic around the bottom of the beds and those kind of things. But I'm going to go ahead and get these trellising systems up. And I have it upside down. So for those of you that follow me, you know my brother came and helped me for a little over a day to help me get these beds in order. And I'm very appreciative for that. I couldn't have done it in that short period of time without him. This will probably be cucumbers. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good that this is going to be cucumbers for us. I need to bring you in so you can see how I put these in. So I'll bring you in. I'm going to put one in. I'm going to put two in to just hold it in place, and then I'm going to bring you in close so you can see how I do this. A lot of people don't know how to do the cattle panel trellis systems. And it took me a few years, just to be honest with you, to figure it out. So I have some bent pieces here that I want to make sure I'm not using as I'm showing you the process. So I hope I have this camera set up so you can see this. That's my goal anyway. So to install this, here's the little clip here. You're going to hook this rounded in on one side. This goes around the back of the T-post, and then we're going to pull this in around. So, and you want to be above the little notch. If you're below the notch, it's going to slide down. So I'm going to wrap that one end in that I was telling you about. I'm going to pull the little V area around the back of the T-post, and now all I got left is this little piece right here. And that's when I'm going to use my pliers. And there is a tool you can buy. I don't have the tool, but I use my pliers and I pull it down and around, and that's it. You don't have to fight with it. This is in. It's not going anywhere. So let me show you on the other one here. Two times. I'll show you twice here. Hopefully that'll help you. All right. I think this is the best I'm going to get. Again, this is the little T-clip for the T-post. There's the little rounded end, and there's the little wonky end. I don't know the right name for this thing. I call it a T-post clip. Anyway, I am above the little notch on the T-post. I put the little nice rounded end. I go around the back of the T-post. And then all I got left to do is pull this over and underneath the cattle panel. That's it. It's in. I didn't use a whole bunch of pressure and work to get it in, but it's in and it's ready to go. And this trellis right here will be for cucumbers next year. Nice long trellis, ready to go. There's one issue. It's too long. It's hanging out the edge of the bed. So we're gonna go get our, and I could have done this before I put it up. But I'm gonna go get my bolt cutters and we're gonna cut this down to make sure that it's inside the bed so that I'm not, one, running into it and hurting myself, but I wanna make sure I keep the walkways open as much as possible. In this bed right here, y'all, I want some melons. I really want melons this year, y'all, or next year, I should say. And I want to be very intentional on where I grow my melons. And I think this is our new melon home, if I could speak today. And I am going to push this back as far as I can so I can keep the front part open to do something different in the front, maybe some flowers or something. But I am intentionally pushing this as far over as I can. I don't think I have to go quite as low so I can get a little more height. I enjoyed some of the best tasting melons in my life a couple of years ago. Y'all, those melons were good. And it was the first time that I had ever been successful growing melons. And I want that to happen again. All right, now these two beds are completely finished. I got my trellising up for both beds, and we will be growing melons and cucumbers in these spaces here. And we're ready to go for next year in these two beds. We just need to put them to bed. So I'm glad you stayed with me to the end. I'm hoping you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. I like to show you everything that I'm doing. And we still got a little more work in this space, but at least you got the idea of what we're trying to do in the main garden for next year's season. So until next time, and I hope there will be a next time that you hang out with me, Kim, at Kim's Cozy Corner. Bye.